dashboard put in one battle, and then I had the site in another battle. Because I was at the line and the site was A, and I thought, wow. I learned it as well when I was 18 years old. When I first got everybody has so I understand what's going on.
Yeah, I have some experience with databases, but not with SQL specifically.
But I mean, we're in.
But yeah, I used to build databases, so I understand databases.
By the way, almost nobody's in the same place.
Terry, the manga guide to databases is somewhere around here.
There's a book?
The manga guide to databases.
Okay.
It's like
cartoon. I did, because it's like you're trying to get your bearings. You go to the first place that you like. Okay, I understand this part. I'm starting here, so I started poking around in the SQL database.
Yeah, and you see how WordPress is organized.
So far.
We've actually developed, I think our most popular C cluster right now is for
Yeah.
And even images are in there.
Two of them are British expats.
It just makes a lot of sense.
So I started by putting a practice WordPress site up on the server that I was using, and then I started to be really irritated because I think my hosting provider is blocking various server functions, and never mind. But the point is, I switched to I downloaded Uniserver, which is a universal server, and it's a
everybody,
stack.
we get started. Packed house tonight. Everybody's sweating, breathing the same air, and I have to apologize in advance. I'm a little out of it today. I've been moving all weekend and all day, but Cole and I are happily Santa Rosa residents now. So good to just be right down the street instead of having to commute from Cloverdale every day. But hi, I'm Melissa. I run WIMP, and quick backstory for those new faces tonight. WIMP has existed as a meetup group now for over 4 years, and when we started 4 years ago, everybody who worked in the web industry in the North Bay kind of was unaware of one another, and now we're all friends. Very long story short. So it's really great that we have our own space now, and we can do meetups like these, once a month like we always have, and we get to use our very own space to basically have like pop-up meetups anytime we want. Like our Facebook group is really active, so if any topic ever comes up that everybody is really interested in talking about, we can just be like, hey, let's all get together and talk about this in person. So I like to say the more possibility that we have for doing all of our work virtually, the more I think there's that need to come back to IRL, So I'm really excited about tonight's meetup. Quinn is here, and he is a very, very good friend of mine, and he works at Zenergy, works right down the street. He has attempted. We had planned on having him do a couple meetups in the past, and things fell apart and then never happened, and so here he is finally, and we've built up so much anticipation that he's really nervous, so give him a hard time. You have my permission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really took the edge off
He's
there.
like, I'm out of here now.
If you need to use the bathroom, do it now.
I'm good.
He'll just go where he stands.
He's not going to talk to me again after this. Okay. We are streaming live the meetup tonight, so that is what Randy is doing back there. So thank you, Randy. And we're going to start out tonight, even though there's a lot of us. I think it's always really important that we always have a round of introductions, so we kind of get to know one another. And if you want to just share your name and what you do, and also, what you want to try and get out of tonight, or if you are hiring or looking for work, it's always good to kind of have that on people's radar, because WIP is thankfully responsible for a lot of people being able to find jobs, gigs, all that kind of stuff. So, yay. Shelby, want to kick it off?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Shelby, and I do a lot of web programming and design stuff, and I'm working with Synergy right now, and always looking for more web work though. And what else?
Yeah, Shelby wasn't paying attention. That about covers it.
Yeah, that covers it.
My name's Julie Ernest. I'm teaching myself web development, and I was trying to think of a way to describe myself today, and I was thinking sponge, but that sounded spineless. And I was thinking conduit, because I'm kind of sieving everything through. But then I kind of came to the conclusion I'm more like a plug-in right now, and I need to be like developed, and I need my settings tweaked, and
this sets the bar for the level of humor that we are encouraging you to have.
My name is Fox. I'm a music producer turned web developer, getting started in web development. Up for work in WordPress and Drupal.
Yay.
Yay.
Eating pizza.
Yay.
And sandwiches.
One sandwich once.
I'm Terry. I am a beginning web developer. I'm learning WordPress, and I am looking for any sort of work that would help me expand my skill set. So if any of you have a WordPress job and it's more work than you're willing to do, and you want someone to help you with the icky stuff, then I'm all up for it.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm a WordPress web developer. I'm also a Waldorf teacher. I tutor children from age 3rd grade to sometimes all the way to college, and I like to do math and reading, but all subjects. And I'm also a flower essence practitioner. Anyways, I'm telling you all this because Melissa always says that my introductions are too short. So I just want to let you
Stacey, you're riding the edge now, being too long.
know
Can you find a middle ground?
a little bit more about me. Because I'm a teacher, I love to teach things. So if you have any WordPress questions, you can ask me.
Yay!
Well done.
I'm Stormy Knight of Net 101, and I've been doing web development and internet-related stuff for 20 years. I work with my husband Mark here, so you'll hear from later because he's somewhere back in here. And we primarily focus on search engine optimization and online marketing consulting.
I'm Annette Dunn. I run a net gain for revenue. I specialize in Google AdWords advertising and websites to support them.
Hi, I'm Caroline Lamba of LambaDesign.net. I'm a graphic designer and web developer, mostly doing WordPress websites. I work with sustainable and natural food brands primarily, and I do children's musical theater on the side for fun. Oops.
I'm Andy, I'm a developer, mostly PHP, JavaScript, system engineering stuff. I'm on a project for the next 4 or 5 months. Do a little bit of freelancing on the side. Just kind of here to hang out tonight and get some fresh air. Been holed up for a while.
And I'm Sheila, and I'm just learning WordPress, so I thought I'd come out tonight and learn a little more.
Sweet.
I'm Kendall. I'm between jobs, hopefully. I have been recently being a tools engineer for checkbox teams, which involves some web programming, like the type of intranet type of web stuff. And so these days I'm thinking of trying to improve my Selenium skills and see if I can get QA work doing test automation.
It's a whole go.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll come back to it.
Oh, don't worry, Christian won't be left out.
I'm Christian Lane. I work for Zenergy Works and labs and ventures, kind of project management stuff. I have a history in the wine business, about a decade. Startup, sales, marketing. I'm a music producer and publisher, and I write and publish words for authors. Recently started specializing in smash words. Formatting and validation, so I guess if you've got like ebook stuff, ebook, Mobi, that kind of thing, you want to get your book on iTunes and things like that, that's what I'll do. If you want some music, we can talk about it, because I do a little film, that sort of stuff.
Larry McDonald, my company is Edison Innovations, and I work on a lot of different startup projects and all. I've been doing application development for about 20 years, and but mostly I work with startup companies and new projects. Currently, something called Kids Teaching Kids, which is a project for kids to videotape their peers explaining every problem in every textbook. Put it up in the cloud, which I'm going to learn about tonight.
I'm Susan Coleman. My company is Dr. Geek. It's web development and training, and I'm here because I want to learn to love the cloud.
I'm David. My company's UDC. I do website design and development for medium-sized companies and any platform they want. I like WordPress, and everybody else likes WordPress now, so I'm becoming a WordPress expert.
Nice. Yeah. Let's hop over here first.
No, I understand.
Was it Dave?
John.
John. Sorry.
Hi, I'm John Udell. I moved to Santa Rosa not too long ago. I work for a startup called Hypothesis that does web annotation. And I'm mostly here because my company is everywhere except Santa Rosa, so I need a little IRL.
Good.
In real life. Sorry.
No, I usually
I know.
It's the opposite of
That's our fault, not
VR,
your fault.
virtual reality.
It's usually my fault.
In
Usually.
IRL. That was redundant, I'm Linda Banks, IRL. So I'm a graphic designer and web designer, front end, and I work out of Madison, Mountain Village and Roanoke Park. And I'm not a music producer. Got a lot of music producers here.
I'm Don St. Dennis, full-time employee down in San Francisco. I work for a telecommunications company. We do systems for maintenance and administration of the telecommunications systems.
Hi, my name is Paula, and I'm here to network. I actually do not know anything about web development. However, I work for the solar industry, and after attending a national convention last week, I realized that there's a need in my industry for an online magazine. And I have this wonderful idea that I want to start an online magazine targeted to the young professionals in my industry. So I am here to meet all of you that are willing to experiment and to help me develop some great ideas so that I can launch this little project that I have in my mind and that I have no clue how to start, but the idea is there.
Yeah.
Start writing on a napkin.
Sure, what the heck. My name's Randy. I'm responsible for this stuff, and I also help Melissa with WIM. And when I'm not doing those things, I am also down at the Sebastopol Center for the Arts. I'm now the director of film programs there, doing the Sebastopol Documentary Film Festival. We just had the very, very successful first ever Sonoma County Cuban Film Festival. Sold out shows. It was like crazy, stuffing all these people into a small room to look at pictures on a screen. But yeah, that was fun. And so yeah, I do a little bit of everything. But that's, you know, was
enough.
that long enough for
It's
you,
enough.
Stacy? Okay, cool.
I'm Joe Filacek. I've been providing businesses with network and internet services in Sonoma County since about '93. Hosting, producing, things like that.
Michelle. I'm co-owner of Flight. We're a small design agency in Santa Rosa. We do branding, identity, packaging design, and websites. And we're currently looking to hire a PHP and Carl. What was the name? Lake? Lake.
You know, birds.
I'm Roger, and I've built an application for production new home builders, and I know a lot of people don't like production new home builders. If someone wants to buy a new home, they want to make it their own home, they want to put in the options and the upgrades the builders offer. That doesn't exist on the web at all. I take care of that. I need help in marketing. This is B2B. This is an enterprise level application. This is nationwide. I don't think I will ever search well at all. Long tail search works fine, but beyond that, if I say new home marketing, well, then all the builders are competing for that same slot on that webpage. Makes no sense whatsoever. So that's why I'm here. I want to find out if people are interested in this, working with me. Thanks.
I'm Erin Castillo. I am a front-end developer and web designer. WordPress is my bread and butter, but I work with Drupal as well. I work with small businesses around the county mostly. In my spare time lately, I'm working on building a home automation system for my home, and I'm writing a web app in AngularJS, which I've never worked with before, which is very fun. So,
I'm Mike Starkey. I coordinate the digital media program at the JC and also teach full-time. I've worked with Quinn over the last year on a job site that we are looking to roll out here in the fall and coordinate that with Wimp, who I've also worked with for a few years now. Love Wimp dearly. And what Randy forgot to mention is that he's going to start teaching.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, a little thing like that. Working at the JC. Yeah, I'm way behind on that too, Mike. Thanks for reminding me. Don't forget to show up.
I'm Mark Harris. I'm Stormy's partner, husband. We are an internet marketing agency. We specialize in national and local SEO and marketing. I write copy. I just basically do whatever it takes to make a site get found in the search engines. As in your case, I'm sure there's not many searches for the terms you're looking for, so you need to do a little bit of research to find out what in fact are the terms that people are looking for, and that's what we do.
We get everybody? Yay, we're all now best friends.
Quinn.
Quinn, not yet.
Not yet?
See, you don't come to meetups very often. So.
He has no idea.
Just tell me when to stand up.
I have to go. I mean, I do things other than this, like, not, well.
Like what?
We don't have enough time. The Naked Freelancer is my podcast. I haven't actually produced a new episode for a while because I've been a little busy moving. It is basically grounds for, providing the voice for the freelance economy. So any one of you who are freelancers, you are the kinds of people who are on that podcast. It's, less instructional to teach people how to do things and more just storytelling. Yeah, so that's it. And I've also recently been working on putting together an alliance of all the co-working spaces in Sonoma County. So so that's really exciting. The website's almost done. It's not a one-day build. It doesn't take one day when I have to do all the content also.
What's the name of it? Come on, go ahead.
What?
The name of the website?
Oh, no, not yet.
We're not going there. We're not going there. All right.
Okay.
It's clever.
coworksonoma.org, but it's not done yet, so you can go and criticize my work, okay.
Yeah, let me get a screen grab.
Oh yeah, and I just relaunched OneDayWebDesigner.com, which I wrote a book of the same name a year and a half ago or so, and but it's sort of like I relaunched it as sort of like a productized service. So essentially, I'm still like doing the service of building websites for people, but it's like sort of one size fits all type thing. I can talk to you later about it if you want to know more. I plan on actually doing a workshop on how to build a website in a day pretty soon. So let me know if you're interested in that.
Yes.
And now I'll let Quinn speak.
Okay, are you sure?
Yes, I'm gonna go to the back now.
Okay, so I'm Quinn Supplee. I've been doing web development for close to 20 years now. I have been working in the Santa Rosa, Sonoma County area for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was living up in Mendocino County, but I also, along the way, I co-founded a hosting company called Media Temple, which is now owned by GoDaddy, and they're a big outfit. It's been a while since I've been involved with them. I'm currently Chief Technology Officer at ZenergyWorks, which is a web development and hosting and SEO company here in Santa Rosa, just a couple blocks from here. And I've known Melissa and Cole and some other people here for quite some time. They've been after me for a while, like she said, to go get up in front of a crowd, so here I am. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight, you shut up. I'm going to be talking about systems administration and setting up a web server on the cloud, and I'm then going to be talking a little bit about application security, particularly in the realm of protecting your WordPress site from getting hacked by bad people, because that seems like it's a continuous thing. So without further ado, let me just get here into my little controller thing. Okay, so Josh, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, actually named my presentation for me. The Accidental Sysadmin, I think it's a great name, so I'm just going to roll with that. It's pretty apropos because I kind of fell into this line of work. I've been into computers and programming since I was just a little kid, but I was always more of just a programmer, and I basically became a systems administrator because the company that I was working for didn't have anyone else to do it, and so I raised my hand, and here I am. So I've taught myself along the way about how to manage Linux sites, servers, and build websites, and I'm going to just try to give you guys a few things that I've learned along the way. So what is a sysadmin? Well, a systems administrator is somebody who manages systems, and that means big computers that typically have a lot of users, and I'm really going to be talking about web systems administration here, but sysadmin is kind of a larger term. It can mean a lot of different things, and in my day job, I run a number of servers with hundreds of different accounts on them. I'm not really going to be getting into a multi-tenant architecture like that here. I'm really going to be just talking about setting up a single server that's really going to be running one website. But all of the techniques that I'm going to be talking about here can be extended if you wanted to run a lot of sites on a single server. There's really just a few changes that you want to make that happen. So we're going to be setting up a website using quote-unquote LAMP. And this is probably my favorite slide in the whole deck here. It really is. So I'm going to be setting up a web server using LAMP, and I'm going to be using DigitalOcean. And DigitalOcean is a cloud provider. There are a bunch of cloud providers out there. You've got DigitalOcean, you've got Rackspace, you've got Amazon Web Services, you've got Linode. There's a whole bunch of them. They're all great. I've used them all for various things in the past. And what is LAMP? Okay, so LAMP is an acronym for a web application stack, and it's consisting of Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Linux is the underlying server technology that basically is it's kind of the background that everything runs on top of. Apache is your web server, and that's actually a program that runs on Linux. It's called a server. It's really a program that's running on a server, so it's a little weird. And that's actually what hosts your what serves up your web pages. MySQL or MySQL is your database, and that's what stores a lot of your page content, your configuration information, user accounts. A lot of dynamic content will be stored in your database. And then PHP is the programming language, or more accurately, the scripting language that you would actually use to write your code. If you're doing WordPress or you're doing Drupal, they run on the LAMP stack. And most of the, between WordPress and Drupal, it's, well over, I don't know, WordPress alone has something like 24% of the internet right now. Drupal has another pretty good slice. So it's really popular, and you can run these things pretty much everywhere.
Drupal's 2.8 last time I checked.
Thank you. Why did I choose DigitalOcean for this presentation? Like I said, there's a server. Link right here. Month, so learn as you want, and your information. They start with it. Gigabyte of RAM per month, something per serving. You may, and it's may need more if you're getting a lot of, and even if you using it long, but value a lot of development. But I just instances. I'm going to kind of go. Yeah, 40 in the region. Ubuntu, good, that's your own preference. So that, for just a, I'm going to be running a key pair. All of them are the server. You just use your public key. You're good to go. It's this is just copy your key on and before a bit of a nightmare because you can at least later is going to actually require a domain name or at least a subdomain. You can actually run the website that I'm about to create right off of the IP address here, but there's a couple of things that won't work quite right if you're just running it off of the raw IP address. So I usually go ahead and set this up now. And then, so I'll know what my web address is. For the rest of this project, I'm going to be at accidentalsysadmin.quinsiply.com. Okay, so now we can log in. And we have already pasted our SSH public key into DigitalOcean's control panel. We did that early on after having created our public key. And now what we can do is we can use the SSH tool, and SSH is a secure shell. And what that basically gives you is an encrypted tunnel into the website or the server that you're logging into. And so I'm going to be logging in as root. So I'm going to be SSH, root at, and then the domain name, whatever it is, or the server name that you're logging into. The first time that you do this, it's going to basically warn you, hey, you've never logged into this server before. Are you sure this is what you want to do? All you got to do is hit enter for yes, and it will log you in, and it will tell you here that it's made a note of that. So the next time that you log into that server from your computer, it will already know where you're going, and it doesn't have to warn you about that the second time. So I've logged in now. Now I'm logged in as root, and I can start really getting to work here. The first thing that you normally want to do is create a new user account for yourself. It's generally not a good idea to be logging in as root all the time. In fact, we're going to disable the ability to log in as root a couple of steps down the road here. What you really want to do is you want to create a new account for yourself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create that account for yourself, and then we're going to grant you superpowers to that account. And it's really a security measure. You don't really want to have root floating around out there because root owns everything. And if anybody ever gets access to your root account, well, game over. I mean, honestly, you might as well just burn your server and start over if that ever happens.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
When you purchase that droplet, they basically are creating a closed gated route.
Yeah, they're creating a virtual,
For you,
it's a
based
VPS,
on the
a virtual
IPs of
private
VPS.
server. Mhm.
So access to the root is not a security issue for DigitalOcean.
I don't think that they can even get into your account themselves,
Okay.
as far as I'm aware.
So, so don't call their support and ask for
Right.
help.
Right.
Don't you think they would want to have that kind of oversight? I mean, just because.
No, I guarantee you
They
they
can't.
don't want to have
Yeah,
that.
they don't, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's probably liability there, and they don't even want to know what you're up to.
But like, what about, I don't want to sound weird, but what about NSA and shit?
That's a whole nother topic that I.
Hey, Christian, the tinfoil's down the hall.
By the way, Christian, if NSA wants in, they'll get it.
Yeah,
They've got hackers for that.
Yeah.
So if you grant yourself superpowers, how is that any more secure than just using root?
Well, it is and it isn't. It's more secure because whatever username that you're using isn't root.
Okay.
So when somebody is doing a brute force attack on your server and they're trying to log in as root with every possible dictionary word, well, that's not going to work because root is disabled. So if you create an account called Quinn or whatever your name is or some obscure string that you may use for your own username, it adds an extra level of security there because it's not root. Root is so common. It's like it's the first thing that they would try.
So it's just a matter of not handing them the first half of the puzzle on a silver platter.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's like having WordPress admin log in as admin.
Yes.
Right. It's real similar to that.
Where's
Um,
the 456?
So again, here there's a couple of commands on all of these things where I've got this green text. It's basically one line at a time. You put in that first line, you hit enter, and then you do if there's more lines here in one of these little blocks of text, you do them one at a time. First thing you're going to do is you're going to run this add user program. You give it the name that you want to create. That's going to create the user account for you. And then the second program that you're going to run here is called password. And you're just basically tell it the password that you're going to create for that user. And as you do this here, it's going to ask you for your password. You're going to type that, and you're going to type it again. You want to make sure that you choose a nice strong password there because this is something that you will have to use from time to time. And you'll want to record it and keep it safe, and don't lose it. So SSH runs. If you've done web development, you may know that the web server runs on port 80 by default. Other services run on other ports. FTP tends to run on a particular port. Mail tends to run on a particular port, and SSH by default runs on port 22. Again, as a security measure, probably the first thing you want to do is change that so that SSH does not respond to port 22. You want to choose a different port that isn't being used for anything. There's a whole range of them. There's 65,000 ports out there. A lot of the upper range ones are basically open for your own use. So you want to change port to something else. For my example here, I've chosen port 22022, which is kind of mnemonic, right? You can kind of remember what that is. It's almost like 22, but it's a little bit different, and it's a nice high range. I probably wouldn't choose port 222. I've seen people do that, but I think that that's going to get hacked about 5 minutes after they try to hack port 22. So choose something a little bit more obscure in the upper range, somewhere up in the thousands, and here I'm choosing that one. So you're actually going to, let me actually go back. There's a, I guess I actually didn't write it down here. So it's right here on the bottom of this. There's a file called sshd-config that you actually need to go in and edit. And when you get into this file in here, you're going to see where it says port 22. That's the default, and you're just gonna make a new line right under there and change it to whatever you want it to be.
So what he did with the port 22 line is he commented it out.
It's actually commented out
is it?
already because it assumes port 22.
Oh yeah.
But I just find that, and then I'm just like, okay, well now I'm going to use port 22022 in this case. And like I said, you can use anything. I run a lot of different servers, and I tend to run SSH on a different port for each one, and then I keep a little list somewhere where I know which port I'm logging into each server on.
Switch config.
Yeah, well I do that too. So then I'm still in that same file, in my SSHD configuration file. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the ability to log in as root. And this will basically prevent anyone from ever logging in as root, even if they happen to know the password or know the port or whatever. The only user that's going to be able to log in is your user that you've just created. And you're basically just going to find, by default, it's going to say permit root login yes, and we're just going to change that to a no. And then, so the next time you try to log in, you actually will not be able to log in as root. You're going to need to log in as the user that you just created. So now that you've done that, you'd save and exit that file, which is kind of a joke in itself. If you've ever used VI.
WQ.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not really going to talk too much about how to actually use VI. You run the Vim tutor, it'll walk you through it. Or I've got links at the end of this presentation that will that are documentation and cheat sheets for that sort of thing. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to run this VI Sudo program, and that is you're going to find a line. There's a line in there that says basically who can do what, and as you can see here, there's a line that says root can do everything basically, and then right underneath that, you're going to just add your own username with that same syntax.
No password.
Yeah. And then basically save and exit this, and that's going to give your user that you've just created the same level of power as root once you're using sudo, which is a kind of a superpower thing. And then the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to reload the SSH service, and that's going to let you. It's basically just going to flush and restart SSH so that all of the changes that we've made up till now will actually take effect. If you didn't do this, all of the changes that you've made so far would actually just kind of be waiting and kind of pending, but they wouldn't really be in effect yet. Okay, so now that we've done all this, we can actually log in as our new user. What I'll normally do is I'll open up a new terminal window or a new terminal tab if I'm using a tab terminal. And then I'm going to log in as my new user. And notice that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell SSH which port I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be logging in into my custom port here. So that -p flag will tell SSH which port you're using. And then rather than being root here, I'm Quinn. I'm going to log in as Quinn. And the nice thing about all of this is that I can do all of that and it'll log me right in. I don't have to type my password because it's already in the system. My SSH key is already in the system. So now from here on out, I'm not going to be using my root user anymore. You can close that once you're logged in and you're sure that you're good with that. You can basically close that terminal and never log in as root again. It's a security thing. It'll keep you a little bit safer from getting hacked. Next thing that you're going to want to do here is you're going to define your network name. There's a file here. There's a program here. Actually, this is wrong.
VI.
You need this VI here. I was rushing through this last night trying to get all my slides together. So you're going to edit this file, sysconfig network. You're going to basically come down here. There's really only 2 lines in this file. This thing is going to be blank right here, or it's going to say localhost. You're going to come in here and you're going to put in your domain name or your subdomain into that hostname field. And again, that will help your new server know what it is and know what it's called for some things that we're going to do down the road a little bit here. Okay, so now let's talk about Yum. So Yum is a package manager, and what that means is it's a program that lives on your server that lets you download and install other programs really easily. So whenever you want to install like a new component of Linux, a new program, all you got to do is type sudo. Sudo, by the way, will give you access to root as long as the user that you're running as has that privilege, which we did a couple steps back.
Abbreviation for super user do.
That's right. So the first time that you type in sudo something or other, it's going to ask you for a password. And the password that you need to give it is the password that you created for your new account. So in my case, the password that I created for Quinn. First time that I do that, it's going to be, oh, so give me your password. So I'm going to do that, and it'll remember your password for a while. So every single time you do sudo, it's not going to ask you for the password every single time. After a certain amount of time has passed and you haven't done anything, it might prompt you for that again. and the length of time that it remembers that is configurable. But anyway, so sudo or yum is a package manager, and you can use this to install tons of stuff. When you first spool up your server, you might actually be surprised that a lot of the things that you might be expecting to be there aren't there because they haven't been installed yet. And you can use yum to install them. For example, zip. We all know what zip and unzip are, right? Well, in Linux, those are actually programs that you have to install. And all you got to do is type yum install zip and hit enter, and it'll ask you, are you sure you want to do that? You say yes, and then it'll go ahead and install that and configure it for you. It's really easy, and it's pretty much a one-liner most of the time.
Quick question, is that basically like just an uploader that uploads, it has this huge library of stuff that it's accessing and it's just uploading?
Yeah, there are what are called repositories, and by default Linux is going to know about a number of repositories, and when you ask to install a program, it's going to look through all the repositories that it knows about. If it can find the program that you're looking for in one of those repositories, it'll go ahead and install it. If not, then you might actually need to tell your system about a repository that it doesn't know about. In fact, we're going to do that a little bit later, because we're going to install something that
It's by name software.
Yeah, exactly. When we go to install PHP Myadmin, if you've ever worked with that, well, Linux doesn't know about that by default, so we're going to have to tell it where to find that, and then we'll install that a few steps down the road here. But yeah, you just basically, what you do is you type yum install and then the name of the program that you need to install, and it'll just kind of get to work. Go ahead.
So is yum analogous to like Fantastico and like the Moo software suite?
In a way, it kind of is.
Okay.
But it's lower level than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can use it to install. You use it to install programs. Back in the day, you used to have to compile all this stuff yourself, and that was a lot of extra steps, and it was kind of prone to making mistakes if you didn't do it right.
And a little extra time on 386s.
Yeah, and it was slow. So yum kind of it kind of bootstraps all of that, and it gets you through a lot of the compiling stuff and a lot of the steps that you'd have to do to actually build a program. You skip all of that. You just basically install these precompiled binaries.
Question about yum, is there, I mean, if we were using a different version of Linux and it called for some other package manager, is there anything particularly advantageous about yum?
I don't know if it's necessarily better or not. Other flavors of Linux do have their own package managers. apt-get is a really common one. It's an analog to that. Okay. If you've ever used that, it's similar. But like I said, we're dealing with CentOS here, so this is the one we're going to use. Okay, so let's get LAMP, and now we're going to go ahead and actually start installing components of our LAMP stack. First thing we need to go ahead and install is Apache, and again, we're just going to run a yum command. We're going to install Apache, which is the name of the program is actually HTTPD, as it's known internally within Linux. So you just basically type sudo yum install HTTPD. It's going to ask you if you're sure. You're going to just hit enter to say yes. It's going to run through this big long list of text as it's going to dump stuff out. But when it gets done, you have just installed Apache just like that in one single line.
The uppercase letter in there is the default. So if you press enter there, it'll say no.
That's true.
You do have to type the Y.
That's true. You're right about that. What he's talking about right here is when it prompts you for yes or no, whichever one of these is capitalized is the one that is the default. So if I just hit enter right here, it would actually say no. So he's right, or she's right. I would want to say yes here and run through that.
So it's not actually expecting you to type in a capital N.
Just hit Y, enter.
Or N, enter. But if it's capital, you can just press enter for the N.
That's right. So assuming that you notice that, type Y and hit enter. Right? Or if you just hit enter, it's going to not do anything. You're going to do it again. Okay, so once we get through that, we will have installed Apache, and we can actually start serving up pages. We got to start it, of course. There's a couple of configuration things that you're going to want to do, and this HTTPD conf, it's basically your main configuration file for Apache. You're going to get in there and you want to tell it the server name, and you can just basically do a search through that file, put in the server, the subdomain or the domain name that you're dealing with here, save that file, and then start Apache using service httpd start. And once you do that, you have a web page. So if you then go in your web browser, you're going to see this, and this is basically Apache's default welcome hello world type of script. If you see this, you're doing great. That means that you have successfully started up a web server, and you can basically put anything you want here. You can put HTML. At this point, you can put HTML or text or whatever. We're going to do PHP in a second here. This is basically, if you see this, you're doing really well, because that means you've spooled up Apache and you're now serving content. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install MySQL. And this is real similar to what we just did. It's another yum install. 2 commands here to install MySQL Server and then to start it. And just follow the prompts. Say yes when it asks you. And
sudo for that start? Because all the other service starts, you didn't have sudo.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so once it's running, the very first thing you want to do is you want to run this MySQL secure installation script. What that's going to do is that's going to step you through your basic security stuff for MySQL. You can literally just hit enter to all the prompts, accept all of the defaults, and that's going to do things that will help harden and secure your database. At some point through this, it's going to ask you for a password to MySQL's root. MySQL has its own root that is separate from your web server, and you want to choose a nice strong password for that, make it different from the one that you created earlier, and write that one down too.
Password.
And now at that point, you should have an Apache server running, and you'll have MySQL running. And then you want to go ahead and do PHP. And once you do these, you're really off to the races. So I'm going to do yet another yum here, and it's I'm going to be installing PHP and PHP-MySQL, and that's basically going to install a PHP with MySQL support so that we can really start working. And then what I'll often do here is I'll create a file called info.php, and if any of you have ever worked with PHP, you know that you can create a one-line script here with this one line in it right here, PHP info, and that's really all you need to put on the page. And I just call it info.php, and then I save that. And then if I browse to that page, I can go there and I can see, all right, I've got PHP running, and then you can look at all your configuration stuff for PHP. This is probably not a page that I would want to leave sitting around on my server, because it will tell anyone who comes and looks at it all kinds of interesting bits of information about your PHP installation. So I'd probably,
including what version many of your things are using, so if there's still any kind of security exploits for those versions, they know, oh,
yeah,
if they haven't already tried, hitting your site.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you don't really want to leave hanging around, or at least unsecured like this. But it's a good thing to just to verify that you've got PHP running, and a lot of the different, you can scroll through this big long page and it'll have everything about your PHP configuration.
And some stuff about MySQL's connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was pretty easy, right? We're doing great.
Shit, that was
All right, so this giant one here, one of the nice things about Yum is you can install a whole bunch of programs all at once on one line just by separating all of the different programs that you want to install with spaces. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to install a whole bunch of different components of PHP, stuff that doesn't necessarily get installed when you first configure PHP. This particular set of components is actually something that I came across while I was researching up on this presentation, and I came across a post on WordPress.org on their support forum saying, what are the PHP components that you need to run WordPress? and somebody said, well, this is what you need. Now, I don't know if this is exactly right or not, but I know about all of these things. These are all good things to have on your server. So you can just copy and paste that into your terminal, and it will install all of those for you all at once. There's a lot more than that. PHP has hundreds of possible components that you may want to install. You can get a list of all of them by doing a yum search with this string right here, yum search php dash. And as you can see, all of these things start with PHP and then a hyphen. And that will give you a great big list of all the different things that you can install. But I think that this will do, at least for the process of getting a WordPress site up and running. A couple of more things that we want to do before we move on. We want to make sure that, that Apache and MySQL actually start every time your server reboots. If you do not do these two commands, if for whatever reason you power your server down and then start it back up, Apache won't start and MySQL won't start. You have to tell it, start MySQL and start Apache whenever the server powers up. You only have to do this once. Once you run these two commands, you're good to go forever, but it's an important thing to do. And then I'll usually go ahead and install a handful of other programs that I may need. This is just an example. I'm going to install zip and unzip, gzip, a couple of other programs like wget, which is a program to fetch information across the internet. You can install whatever you want. This is just basically something that I do every time because I know I'll always need these programs. Okay, so now let's go ahead and install Php Myadmin. And if you know what that is, it's a graphical interface for managing your databases. It's a web page, it's a web script that lets you create databases, work with the data within them, create database users, create tables, all of that sort of thing. You can do this manually. You can go to SourceForge or wherever it is that PHP lives, or Php Myadmin lives. You can download it. You can upload the zip file to your web server. You can unpack it. You can go through it all step by step, or you can just do it like this. You just tell. Actually, this wget right here we did on the last slide, so you could probably skip that. But once you install wget, you can basically just use it to grab the binary that PHP is. So you basically just paste this in, run that thing, and then do this yum install Php Myadmin, and it will install that for you. It'll install it in a way that if you ever do run a lot of different sites on this server, Php Myadmin will be available to all of them. You don't have to install it for all of your different sites, or even all of your different domains that you may run. It's basically, it'll live in one place and it'll be available for all of your sites, which is really nice. You'll want to configure it a little bit here. And what this really comes down to is securing it. Because again, you don't want to have Php Myadmin open to the world. You want to have it secured and locked down just for you. The easiest way to do that is to restrict access to it to your own IP address. And what I mean by that is your local IP address from your house, from your office. You want to figure out what your local IP address is, and then you go in and you replace all the instances of this 127.0.0.1 with your own IP address, and I'm just assuming here it's all 255, which it won't be. And that one-liner right there will search and replace that entire file of all of those instances of 127. And then we're going to go ahead and restart Apache with that line underneath of it. And once you do that, you should be able to browse to Php Myadmin.
Can you clarify a little bit why changing the IP address increases security?
So what this is going to do is it's going to deny access to this Php Myadmin page from everywhere in the world except for where you're logging in from. The one drawback to this is if you're on a mobile network or you're changing from one IP address to another, you may find yourself locked out. There are ways around that. You can add multiple IP addresses into that, and you can also apply another, you can actually give yourself a password prompt so that you have to log into this. But it's a little bit outside the scope of what we're dealing with here. But the basic idea is you restrict access to this page from the entire world except for where you know you're from.
And that's your public internet address.
Right.
Not 192.168.
Right.
A lot of people don't have static IP addresses. I use a
Yeah,
DNS to, it runs a program, so it gives you a static IP address that changes, or no, it's not an IP address, it's your host name.
Right.
And it figures out what the IP address, so can you use a host name?
Yeah, you can.
dynamic DNS, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what he's talking about is if you
restart your modem. Basically.
Yeah, if your IP address changes from time to time, which it may happen, and particularly if you're just at home and you're on Comcast or something like that, and you're not paying for the extra, static IP as they call it, you can use a service called DYN DNS, which is a service that basically will assign you a host name that will always stay current with your IP address, and you can put that into that script as well, and it will let you log in even if your IP address changes, which may happen. If you're working in an office environment, corporate network, you probably have a static dedicated IP address which will never change, in which case you can just plug it in like I showed you there. Okay, so now we're doing really well. We've installed Apache, we've installed PHP, we've installed MySQL. We could really start installing WordPress right now if we wanted to, or Drupal or anything else. But I'll usually go through a couple of other security steps right here. One of my favorite security tools in my toolkit is called Mod Security. It's basically a firewall, and it gives you a lot of it gives you opportunities to do a lot of really cool security stuff right on the command line. What we're basically going to do right here is we're going to install it along with a few other libraries that it needs to run. And
do you actually need to specify the libraries, or does that install that as dependencies?
This right here will basically do it.
But so can you just uninstall mod security?
You probably could, but I think it needs some of these other things as well.
But it should install those as dependencies, right?
It depends. It depends.
That's what you did there.
So once you install mod security, then you're just going to go and configure it. You can do a lot with it. It's really flexible and configurable, and it's really a whole topic of its own that I'm not going to get into. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically show you this. And this there's this link right here at the bottom of this screen is the page that I got this from. What this does is this is a brute force. It's a brute force detection for WordPress specifically. So you can install this into your mod security routine, and if somebody tries to hammer your WordPress login repeatedly, it will lock them out. And it will do that before WordPress even gets involved. It does it at the server level, so that if you get like 500 or 1,000 login requests, like somebody basically just trying to brute force your WordPress, it will lock them out before WordPress even knows about it, which is great because every time somebody hits that WP login.php script, it has to fire up PHP, it has to connect to the database, it basically uses RAM, it uses resources, it uses CPUs. And if you don't have something like this in place, you can get brought to your knees pretty easily because WordPress is such a fat target. People are always trying, and I swear to God, if you set up a server and you leave one of these things alone and you watch your logs, it will just be a matter of minutes before some IP address in Brazil or in Russia or in China or in anywhere really starts hammering you. So it's really important to do something like this. This is the best approach that I found so far for this because it runs right on Linux and it kicks in before WordPress even knows about it. Obviously, this isn't something that you're going to be able to remember, word for word, but this link right here, it has it, and that web page talks exactly about how to implement this. It's a great post, and I use this on all of my servers.
Just to go slightly off, is there any options in terms of if you're hosting at a regular hosting provider of doing something like this inside of Linux?
Some hosts are running this already. And I think maybe HostGator does. They install this by default. I'm not sure about...
So it's something you can call your hosting provider
Yeah.
and say, I want to do this.
Yeah, you could definitely ask them about that. One of the great things about running your own cloud server is that whatever you want to do, you can do. You may not be able to install mod security on a shared hosting platform because they don't, you don't have that level of access to the server. If they were to install it for you, they'd have to install it for everyone on that server. And they may very well say, no, you can't do that.
So is this brute force protection part of mod security?
So, no, this is basically something that you're going to add to your mod security configuration file. And this is basically just a chunk of it, and you're going to basically just put this into your file in a particular spot. This blog post right here will walk you through the exact process of how to do that. You basically put it towards the end of your configuration file so that all the other stuff that happens like by default will happen, and then this will also kick in. And this seems to work really well. I've had great success with it.
So having done this, can you skip the plugins for WordPress that monitor login attempts?
You probably could, although I have a couple of those that I'm going to talk about as well. I tend to install a couple of those anyway. I'm a belt and suspenders kind of guy, so I figured, there's no reason why not to have both something like this and then another level as well.
Sorry, what does a what does a brute force attack look like? I envision the movies where try this password, try that password, and a bot does it.
That's exactly what it is.
Characters, and it's just like a machine gun, and until the key fits the lock.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Awesome. I mean,
It's awesome. It's awesome depending on which side of the attack you're on.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can you expect, now, you're using DigitalOcean or some other service like that, do they have any level of fighting off these attacks before it gets to you?
Yes and no. Something that you might want to do, and I was going to kind of talk about this at the very end, but you can use what's called a web application firewall, kind of at the DNS level. A really popular one, and something that I actually strongly recommend, is a service called Cloudflare. And Cloudflare, they have a free version. It doesn't cost you anything. And they also have paid versions, and they will try to upsell you to their fancier, service level. But even their free version will do a lot to prevent this sort of thing before anyone even gets to your server. So you can install Cloudflare. You can use another one is Sucuri, SUCURI. There's a security plugin as well that I'm going to talk about in a minute. They also offer a web application firewall, and those things I highly recommend using one of them at least. Really just one. There's no reason to have two. And yeah, that will prevent some of these types of brute force attacks from ever reaching your server in the first place. But as far as, you need to do something, whether it's this or another one. Cole?
Sorry if I missed this part. What was the brute force function that you had enabled there? What was that called?
So it's some custom rules that you put into your mod security configuration.
Okay. Just to throw it out there, there's a really great script that you can install called fail2ban.
Yep.
Which is also another really good one.
Fail2ban is also on my list of talking points here.
Jump ahead for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, time travel.
Yep. And it's a similar kind of a thing. It's a configurable brute force, protection program. Okay, so now we're basically ready to install WordPress, and we're going to do it the cool way. Okay.
CLI, baby.
So that's right. So there's a open source program out there called WordPress WP-CLI, WordPress Command Line Interface. And if you've ever used Drupal, you might have heard of something called Drush. This is basically Drush for WordPress. Drush is better. But WP-CLI is pretty awesome. It will let you manage your WordPress site right from your command line without having to muck around a lot with downloading files and things like that. These handful of commands right here will install and prepare WP-CLI for you. I'm not really going to go through them all one by one. Just basically use these lines one at a time, copy and paste one line at a time into your terminal, and you should be good to go.
See, you're showing curl on this instead of wget, but it's very similar. It's another one of these
Same difference.
URL
Yep.
downloading.
And you don't need to show a flag on wget.
Well, this is from the documentation on WP-CLI, so I just
It's just that they didn't want you to have to install wget. Curl is already installed on all servers.
That's right. And wp-cli.org is the webpage that all of the documentation here is from. I use this pretty much every day in my day job. I manage over 200 WordPress sites, and I could not do my job without this. So it's a great tool, and we're going to use it to install, actually, if I go back one, let's see. No, next one. Not quite there yet. All right, so yeah, so this is the one right here. So we're going to go ahead and install WordPress using these commands right here. And what we're basically going to do is I'm going to navigate into my web root here. I'm going to change ownership is basically I'm going to lock my WordPress installation down so that everything is owned by me in terms of my user account. And I kind of have a philosophy here of WordPress or any scripts really should be owned by you as the user. And if you're using FTP or programs to upload and download files, those basically run under your user account. But if the web server itself is writing files, if it's uploading images or storing temporary files or cached files or anything like that, all of those files should be owned by the web server, not by you. So there's going to be a kind of a differentiation in some of your WordPress files are going to be owned by you, and some of your WordPress files are going to be owned by the web server. We're going to start out here with everything being owned by you, which is what this does. There's a user and a group, which both have my name on them. And this directory here is basically your web root.
Colon works too.
Colon works there as well. And then you're going to navigate into it, and then WP core download. Just like that, it's going to download WordPress into your web root, and then you'll see it, and it'll be ready for you to start working with. I've chosen a. I kind of glossed over this. I'm going to use PHP Myadmin, which we installed earlier, to create my database. I'm going to create my database, my username, and I'm going to grant access to my database from that user. So basically create a new user, a database, and grant all permissions to that user. And I've chosen an awesome password here, which I think you'll all appreciate. So now I can go ahead and I can browse to my website. First thing I'm going to see is the WordPress installer. And it's its famous 5-minute WordPress install. Basically just go through this. This is, again, you don't want to do this. You want to change your prefix here to something else other than WP underscore. And again, that's just a security thing to, much like not using admin as your username, you probably want to not use WP underscore as your database prefix, just because it's so common and widely used that it's kind of a target. So call it something else. But I forgot to change that there.
The reason why they do that is for any SQL injection vulnerabilities that come and go. You'll often find that people will try to do something with the WP underscore users or WP underscore whatever options.
Right. And you just change it to something else, and none of those brute force attacks will even apply to you.
Is there? I've installed WordPress a couple times. I don't ever remember seeing an option to change the prefix. Is there something special you have to do to trigger that?
I think it's part of the installer.
You create your own PHP file first, and you can specify what the prefix will be.
It's in the config.php for WordPress.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're working with a site that's already been created, it's probably already been defined for you.
How many characters?
I don't think there's necessarily a limit, but you probably don't want to use too many because your table names start getting pretty long.
But you're not limited to.
No, you could have several there, more than 3.
Do you have numbers, characters?
I don't think you want to start with a number, but other than that, I think it should be fine. Okay, so at this point, we've actually installed WordPress. now we're going to come back to our terminal and we're going to install a couple of security plugins that I find useful. You'll notice that I can install plugins right from the command line without having to necessarily go and download them or even use WordPress's own little downloader program. And in fact, one of the things that I always do is I disable WordPress's ability to download and install plugins by itself. I also disable WordPress's ability to edit files. You'll notice, I mean, I'm sure you've come across how you can edit your theme right from within WordPress. I feel like this is a terrible idea for a lot of reasons, so I'm going to disable that too in a minute. But I always use the command line. I use this WP CLI to do all of this management type stuff. So I can install a couple of plugins here. Security Scanner is a really great one for making sure that your WordPress, all your files have not been modified outside of your knowledge. And it'll run like an integrity check and a lot of other things. Login Lockdown is a really popular plugin. It's a little bit similar to that mod security rule we installed earlier. I'll usually run them both because they kind of cover a couple of spots. It's just to have a better coverage.
Belt and suspenders.
Belt and suspenders. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and install those plugins. They won't be turned on yet. They won't be activated, but we'll do that in a second. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my WordPress uploads directory. That's the place where you're going to upload, like if you're using WordPress's media manager, you're going to upload images and things like that. They're going to go into that directory. I'm going to make this directory owned by the web server, like I talked about earlier, rather than being owned by myself. The web server owns it. That means that the web server can upload files into that directory. And it's kind of differentiated from the scripts and the theme files and things like that. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into WordPress. I'm going to turn on those two plugins, activate them, and configure them. I'm not really showing those screens right here, but it's just a matter of your usual plugin configuration. And they're not really that complicated. You just kind of set the defaults and you should be good to go. I'm going to do a couple of things to my WordPress configuration. I'm going to add this line here to the bottom of my WordPress configuration. That's going to prevent WordPress. It's going to prevent you from being able to use WordPress to edit your theme. And some of you may hate that because you're used to using WordPress to edit your theme. But
Quit doing that.
But yeah, don't do that. You know, I'm all about security and making sure that things are safe and that you're not going to get hacked. And probably one of the easiest ways to get hacked is to let WordPress be a little bit too loose.
Another good reason that I see very often is somebody's making a change with PHP, for example, to edit those files. Well, you're using PHP to adjust PHP. If you write it wrong,
yep,
you are completely locked out. WordPress will not load anymore because you've written bad code that WordPress now can't load. I have had to help so many people get out of that bind. It's another very good reason besides this. Yeah,
that is a really good point.
Yeah.
Syntax
Hey,
error.
was there a white screen?
Yeah, your host.
That's a different problem.
That's
We
a
won't
different
go there.
story. I didn't.
And then another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to prevent PHP from even being able to execute from within certain directories. So your WP content and your uploads directory, those directories have no business whatsoever actually executing any PHP code. If you have any PHP code in those directories, you should think really hard about why you do. Chances are you shouldn't. Some of the worst WordPress exploits that have been out there over the past few years have exploited exactly that. There was a plugin from a few years ago called Tim Thumb, which is pretty notorious. You may have heard of it. It hacked a lot of websites because it didn't follow good security practices, and that's exactly what it did. Is it ran PHP scripts from within your content directory. We don't want to allow that. Putting this into your htaccess files within those directories. So you can create an htaccess file inside your WP content directory, put that in it, and that will prevent PHP from being able to execute from within that directory.
Put htaccess in what?
Inside your WP-content directory.
Is this a different
Yeah,
access?
you can create another htaccess file inside your uploads directory, inside your content directory. And you basically are just excluding PHP from being able to execute in those places. And then, of course, you've got WordPress's own main htaccess file. This is what it looks like by default, right? this is some extra stuff that I put in for security reasons. It's real similar to what we just talked about. It's basically just going to prevent access to the outside world from being able to run a lot of the scripts that PHP actually needs to run internally. There's no reason for these scripts to be accessed from outside, and by denying them in HT access, it's going to help lock down your site. And again, all of this stuff will be in the presentation file that you can download, so you don't have to try to write all this down. And that's it. You should basically now have a your own LAMP stack running, your own WordPress site. It should be pretty secure and performant and good to go. And you can use WP CLI to manage it in the future. And hopefully you won't get hacked if you follow these basic security practices. And that's pretty much where we're at. There is a bunch of stuff that I just really didn't have time to get into here, like Cole mentioned, fail to ban, a bunch of other stuff. You might want to install an analytics program, server-side analytics, which is a little bit like Google Analytics, but it actually runs on the server. It parses your server logs and gives you pretty graphs and things like that. The one that I usually use is called AW Stats. There's a few other things here that you might be interested in. A couple of scripts that will help you monitor your server, show you kind of what the traffic and the CPU load is and things like that. There's really a whole bunch more that we could talk about. And then finally, I've got a couple of pages here at the end of my presentation that are basically a lot of references and posts and links that refer to a lot of things that I just talked about. And that's pretty much it. And my presentation is already up, so if you want to go onto my website, you can download this as a PDF and you know, start getting started.
Will you post that link on Facebook?
Absolutely, I will.
When you have this set up and it's very secure, what about clients who want to go in and muck around? Which, I mean, you know, you work for a big company, you run all this, but some of us, you know, clients want to go in and make changes, do this, do that. Does that prevent that? Or does that, I mean, sometimes you want to prevent.
So the approach that I've just talked about here will actually prevent some of what you're asking about. Probably the first thing that I actually do want to talk about is don't ever use FTP for anything. FTP should probably just die. You should not be using FTP because it is a terrible protocol. It is from the prehistory. It goes back to Gopher and Telnet days. Who here is using Gopher or Telnet?
Oh, I love Gopher.
Right, but
the
people
web was not going to happen. It was all going to be Gopher.
Yeah. So, but you know, FTP is still everybody who's a web developer probably knows and uses FTP, and it's really terrible. And what you should be using at least.
Why do you think it's so terrible?
So the biggest reason is that it's completely open text. It's all completely unencrypted. So if you're using SFTP, right there, as secure FTP, is basically running FTP over SSH, and you get all of the same syntax and all of the same commands that you're used to dealing with FTP, but you're running through an encrypted tunnel.
So basically, SFTP is okay.
SFTP is light years beyond FTP, even though it's still really clunky, and like just dealing with multiple files is going to be a real pain. I like a couple of, my favorite program for this sort of thing is rsync. For transferring files, rsync is brilliant, and it's a whole nother level of things that we probably can't really get into. But Linda, to answer your question, you should at least be using SFTP. And if you set up everything like we talked about earlier, setting up your SSH public key and everything, SFTP will work. And it uses the same command set as FTP, but it is much more secure. If you have a lot of different customers and you're running, you want different customers to be logging into their own sites and not being able to get into your other sites, it's really beyond what we could talk about here. You'd wind up setting up separate users and groups for each of those people, and kind of compartmentalizing each site into different, little boxes. So you can do that. You can run multiple sites. You can give out passwords to your clients so that they can log in and edit their own files using FTP. But I didn't really cover all of that here. But you know, a little more reading, and it, you know, it's definitely within reach.
You can do the same add user and pass WD stuff
Right.
with sudo.
Right. You can create as many users as you want.
Well, I'm talking about things too, like if you're protecting the media file, and then say they want to write a blog and they would upload a photo, then can they do that?
WordPress's uploader will still work.
Yeah, so since
It'll still work.
Since you made the upload directory the same user as the server looks at it and is like, I own this, I can write to it.
Yeah, I really have, the only thing that I've really, with this approach, the only thing that I've really kind of broken the functionality for, if you want to call it that, is the built-in file editor for editing your own theme. The media manager will still work. And you can still log in with SFTP and you can edit your theme kind of, you know, as from a developer
You
perspective.
just edit your theme with CSS?
Well, and the thing is with the inline theme editor in a web browser, you have to copy the content out, paste it into a text editor, edit it, paste it back in, save it, to actually be able to modify your theme at all. So it's like just modifying files that you're connected to via SFTP is way faster.
Where does FTPS fit in the
SFTP?
No.
FTPS is FTP running over SSL, which is not something that I've ever really had to deal with. So I don't really know too much about that. I know that it's a thing, but it's not something that I've really had to pay attention to. But yeah, SFTP is not too bad because it is basically the FTP that you're used to using, but it runs over SSH and it is encrypted. You will need to tell it when you connect via SFTP. You'll got to tell it what port you're using. And we set up a custom port. It's not going to run on port 22. It's going to run on whatever you set it up on. So when you're creating your SFTP connection, you'll want to you do have to go in and say, you know, there's going to be a option in your FTP program when you choose your protocol. I use CyberDuck. When I have to use FTP on my Mac, I use CyberDuck, and it supports SFTP. And so when you choose the protocol, choose SFTP instead of plain FTP. Give it the port number that you're working with, and it'll work. It'll let you in.
So you're okay with any FTP program that you can select SFTP?
Yeah, so on Windows, FileZilla, on Mac, Transmit,
CyberDuck, FileZilla, pretty much all of them.
Although is SFTP?
I believe so.
Although Coda on Mac is very nice because it's also got an editor for you.
It defaults to 21.
Any other questions or comments?
What's your favorite color?
He's wearing it.
Well, pretty much.
His favorite color is Vim.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
so new.